Your Highnesses, Your Excellencies, delegates from around the world, I am truly honored to be here at this important and timely conference. When I was first asked to come to this conference, I could think of no more appropriate place to have this conference than Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a rich country, but 10 years ago, with the publication of Vision 2030, the Crown Prince recognized that the future of Saudi Arabia depended upon more than pumping oil out of the ground. It involved changing and adding to the industrial base, the technology, to the information basis of the economy. And Vision 2030 also recognized that in order to do this, it had to deal with the quality of the labor force and the quality of its schools. That is the theme that I want to highlight today. It's a theme that is echoed in a majority of the countries of the world today, and it's a theme that is properly echoed. So I want to make three points today, and I'll provide you a little bit of data on the economics of improving the quality of schools. The first point that I would make is that the only way to move an economy into advanced manufacturing and technology and information systems is a high-quality education. Second, redirecting systems of the world, school systems of the world, is challenging. And third, that it is possible to make changes. It's not automatic, but it's possible. Those are the themes I want to hit today. The historical lesson is pretty clear. The vast majority of differences in long-run growth rates of countries around the world can be explained simply by the quality of the labor force and the societies that underlie those countries. Importantly, we can judge that quality for economic purposes largely by the standard PISA and TIMSS scores that we have. And because of that, it implies the whole analysis implies the importance of adopting worldwide standards for education systems of the schools in every country. This involves underlying that, emphasizing the quality of the curriculum and the teachers. But these things are absolutely important. Just as a footnote, I recently have been trying to develop a program to improve the education quality in sub-Saharan Africa. Lots of countries and lots of individuals are interested in the development of sub-Saharan Africa. But today, 90% of the school children in sub-Saharan Africa do not have the skills to participate in a modern society. Development in sub-Saharan Africa will only happen if the quality of the schools improves. So let me turn to the challenges. The challenges are obvious, I think. I'll illustrate the challenges by Saudi Arabia. It's easy to do because Saudi Arabia has a vast majority of its youth in secondary schools. But if we look at what their skills and knowledge is at the end of secondary school, we see that fully 2/3 of the youth will not have the skills to participate in a modern information technological society. Now, if it was possible in the next 10 years to bring the quality of the schools up so that all Saudi youth, in fact, reached minimum levels, it would imply faster growth of the Saudi economy. It would mean that the present value of added growth to the society is 8.5 times the current GDP of Saudi Arabia. Now, what does that mean? That means that the average GDP for the remainder of the century would be 17% higher. Each and every year, 17% higher. Now, I'm not trying to actually single out Saudi Arabia. It just happens that the quality issues in terms of what the skills that the youth get is exactly the average for the world as a whole. 2/3 of the youth in the world today do not reach those quality standards that we think is important for active and full participation in society. Now, Saudi Arabia is ahead because 1/3 of the youth in the world never get to secondary schooling, so that the rest of the world has a bigger challenge of first getting kids into school and secondly, getting the quality there. But it's important that this transformation start early and quickly. Let me give you what history suggests about the impact of improving schools around the world. First, the standard recipe for dealing with education issues is get everybody into schooling. And that would have an important thing because important impact because, as I noted, 1/3 of the youth around the world are not in secondary schooling today. If we could get everybody into secondary schooling around the world, it would boost growth around the world and equal a little over 1 times the current world GDP from getting everybody in school. The present value would be that large. But if I thought of the situation of trying to get all youth in school, in secondary schools, and got the quality up to minimum standards, it would boost growth around the world so that the present value is over 700 trillion US dollars. That's 5.5 times world GDP today. 5.5 times from getting everybody up to minimal skills. Now, I mentioned sub-Saharan Africa. If sub-Saharan Africa could do that, it would be 28 times the current GDP in sub-Saharan Africa. But there's obviously a challenge there. Getting the schools up to that level is, in fact, difficult. There are examples. We can look at the PISA scores and see that there are examples. Lots of the world was set back by the pandemic. I should note that Saudi Arabia did better than most countries of the world during the pandemic in terms of not losing ground. And maybe it's a statement about the early start that came from Vision 2030. But we have some lessons, and the lessons are pretty simple. The lessons are that there is no substitute for having good assessments of where the schools are and accountability systems that relate to the performance of schools. Accountability systems that aren't based upon just counting the inputs to schools and how much we spend, but are based upon what kids are learning at the end of school. Secondly, it's getting quality teachers. Now, there's been a lot of discussion, even this morning, about the use of technology in schools, and maybe AI is going to reform the schools of the world. One thing that we learned from the pandemic was pretty straightforward. Today, if we look at the schools during the pandemic, the schools that went back to in-person instruction systematically did better than the schools that used a hybrid system of some in-person and some technology. And both of those did better than fully remote systems. We are not prepared to replace quality teachers at this point in time. Now, developing the quality teachers, of course, is itself a challenge. And I don't think that I have time to discuss this in great detail. So at this point, I hope that the lessons about the quality of schooling are clear. The economics, I'm leaving out the important issues of culture and the values that schools impart. But looking at just the economics, the quality of schooling is the key. And so I will leave here. I know that there are a number of ministers of education here from around the world. I have in my hands the data for every country in the world about where the situation stands and what is to be gained by improving the schools. And I assert that this is the information that is needed to take to the Minister of Finance to support the investments in school, because it is the future of every nation of the world. Thank you.